I've been working as a dramaturg for many, many decades. Our current artistic director, Andre Bishop, was a dramaturg. That's when I first met him. He was at Playwrights Horizons. I was at the Phoenix Theater. And I came to Lincoln Center and was actually hired by Gregory Mosher in 1988. I had been working at the acting company and at Second Stage Theater. And I ran into Gregory on the street, and he asked me to come down and have a conversation with him. They had just started up and were in a tremendously successful early, I think it was the second season. Serafina was running, House of Blue Leaves had just closed, the front page was up, and Anything Goes was starting. So it was a pretty exciting time. It was really an exciting time because the theater had been dark for many years, and the question was how it would start up again, and what would be our mission. So I worked for Gregory for a few years, and then he left, and Andre, who was an old friend, we were sort of joyfully receiving him when he said he would do the job. So he came up, and I've been working with him since, when is this now? When did Andre come? In 1992. When I first came to Lincoln Center, I went through boxes of scripts that were lying there. I make it a policy we do here that we read everything and we respond very quickly to anything that comes our way. So I was kind of appalled to find all these scripts waiting for me, so I went on a reading marathon to go through them. And one play had been given to Gregory in Chicago by a then very little known scholar of African American life, whose name is Henry Louis Gates, Jr. He had just taken a job at Duke University, and it was a play that was a lost play by Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston. Langston Hughes everybody knew at that point. Zora was out of print and was one of, we call him Skip Gates, one of Skip's missions to get Zora Neale Hurston's work into print, and he's responsible now for the books that everybody buys in college classes, and Zora Neale Hurston is kind of an icon. So the play was called Mulebone, and it was their only collaboration. They never worked together again after that. And I read it and thought, this is really an interesting play. And it's interesting as a play, it's interesting as an art, as an artifact. And it would be wonderful for us to do. It's a cast of, I think, 36 actors, requires music. So it became a project of mine to get this play on. And we began working with the estates of both Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston. I got in touch with them, and they were wonderful people. And we also looped in the advice of Arnold Rampersad, who is a award-winning biographer and had just published the biography of Langston Hughes, so he became part of our team. And I had the great pleasure of reaching out to Taj Mahal, the musician, who is an old friend and just came back to do some music. I got him into Joe Turner's Come and Gone, who composed the music for the piece. And we began trying to put this production together. And officially, we ended up doing it and performed at the Barrymore for 20 weeks on Broadway. But it was a fascinating attempt to really bring this piece back to life. We're looking for unusually brilliant work. And that's always a frustratingly vague description. But what I often say is, you should be able to take the title page off of a script and know who wrote it. And I think you could see that's pretty easy to do if you take a play by, Tina Howe or David Mamet or Sam Shepard or Wallace Shawn. You would know instantly who wrote that play. So you're looking, some people call it voice, you're looking for voice. And then we're looking for unusual literary staying power, so that you'll want to do this play in 20 years. That's the kind of work that we should be doing. That's primarily what I look for when I read and when I recommend plays to Andre. I'm looking to find writers who understand acting and who know how to write for really good actors of whatever style. I'm not talking about an old-fashioned style, for example. I think that's what is the common denominator of theater, is an emotional connection between an audience and an actor on stage. And writers who reach that, and it's reached, of course, by the writers I just mentioned, it's reached by Beckett, it's reached by Brecht, you can reach for it in any number of different ways. It really boils down to understanding, for your own generation, what that process is. For me, one of the highlights of this work is that you get to collaborate. I mean, my most exciting example in recent years was the COAST of Utopia. Of course, that was everyone's favorite show. I got to spend the summer before we went into rehearsal with the actors playing the leading roles in that trilogy, giving them in very different ways all the information they needed about the historical characters they were playing. The trilogy is absolutely historically accurate. The characters are real. There's only one made-up character. So I simply gave every bit of information I could find, and I found it in very, for me, I thought, really kind of interesting ways. And they got so excited by this, met with each of them individually for probably a month or so, a month and a half, that they all took a trip to Russia, which I then had to organize. It's like I don't know anyone in Russia, I had to find somebody. They went to visit the Herzen Museum, which makes me very jealous. So when we began rehearsals, the great Tom Stoppard said to the company, "Does anyone have any questions?" And there was not a question. They just went right to work. They went to work on what they know how to do, which is, what am I doing in this scene, and what do I, but they knew every single thing about their own characters.
My friends, comrades, I give you a toast. The liberty of each for the equality of all.
The liberty of all? Huh? What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything.
I am not free unless you too are free.
That's nonsense. You were free when I was locked up. I am devoted to you, Bakun, and I delight in the fanfare, no, the funfare of your pronouncements. You've made yourself a European reputation by a kind of revolutionary word music from which it is impossible to extract an ounce of meaning.
The first Shakespeare I worked on here, a production of Measure for Measure, that Mark Lamos directed with an absolutely wonderful cast: Jack Weston, Campbell Scott, Kate Burton, Ethel Eichelberger, who was a downtown transvestite performer, and the great Len Cariou. Was an amazingly interesting and brilliant production, I thought, of a Shakespeare play back in the old days. Of course, the COAST of Utopia, South Pacific, Light in the Piazza. It's hard to pick. There are just so many that mean things for particular reasons. Actors you love, wonderful writers and directors. Lincoln Center Theater Review was founded by John Quare, and he remains as co-executive editor with me. And we have a line editor, currently Alexis Gargliano, who has a day job at Simon & Schuster. And John's conceit, he founded the journal just before I came to Lincoln Center, and it was sort of in hiatus, and I thought it was so important, and it really went on a regular footing when I came on, and it's been published regularly now for almost 20 years. His conceit was that we call it the ideal theater-going companion. When you exit the play and you wonder, I wonder what Margaret Atwood would think about utopias, because she wrote The Handmaid's Tale, or Dinner at 8, I wonder what kind of food they would have been eating, or I wonder about dinner parties. That's what we hope the magazine does. So we work with, and we go to each issue, writers who primarily are not in the theater. We try and get their sort of their feedback or what they would make of this production. So you mentioned Dinner at 8. That's a really good issue. We went to a number of novelists, Rick Moody and Jennifer Egan, and we said, what was the worst dinner party you ever had? And Laurie Siegel, we had fantastic responses. A writer who was a serious writer and had won some awards but still had to work as a caterer, as all writers do, to make ends meet. Took a catering job. You never know where you're going to go when you take the job. You're just told to show up somewhere. And it turns out she was going to be the waiter at the Penn Literary Awards dinner for all of her friends winning the awards. You know, those kinds of stories.